Today, we start the second of 18 parvas in Mahabharata. This is called the Sabha Parva. The Khandava Vana has been burned down. There are very few survivors. One of them is Mayasura. He is considered equivalent to Vishwakarma, but for Daityas. Now he offers Arjuna and Krishna some help. He expresses gratitude for saving him and says, I want to do something for you. Arjuna says, I have everything, I don't really need anything. Go talk to Krishna, maybe he may need your help. Krishna says, I do need your help, but not for myself. I want you to build a palace for the Pandavas in Khandava Prastha. And I want you to build a palace unlike anything that has been ever seen on this earth. Mayasura says, I need to fetch material from afar, gemstones and jewels and building material that is not available where you are. Give me some time, I'll go fetch them and build the palace of your dreams. And while that was happening, Krishna stayed there for a while and spent time with the Pandavas. Eventually, he left for Dwaraka. Now Maya, the Asura architect, takes 14 months to build this palace. And once the palace is done and Pandavas have settled in it, one day Narada comes. Narada asks the kind of questions that are expected to be asked to a king. This is a long list of questions. Of the hundreds of questions Narada asks Yudhishthira, I want to share one which I found very interesting. He asks King Yudhishthira if he has banished the 6 evils. The 6 evils are sleep, idleness, fear, anger, weakness of mind, and procrastination. These are evils for a king and to a large extent evils for all of us as well. When Yudhishthira has answered satisfactorily all the questions that Narada had asked him, he asks Narada in return, have you seen a palace like this ever? You who travel with the speed of your mind in all the 3 worlds, you should have seen something like this, but have you seen something like this in the mortal realm? Narada says, not on the earth, but I'll describe to you some palaces of the gods. I have seen the palaces of Yama, Varuna, Indra, Kubera and Brahma. And he goes on to describe in detail the size, the scope, the beauty and the greatness of these 5 palaces. And as he finishes describing the palace of Brahma, he gives a list of all the people who live there. Narada mentions the names of sages and Gandharvas and gods and other celestial beings who live in the palace of Brahma, but he names only one human being, and that is Harishchandra. So obviously they are intrigued and out of curiosity ask Narada, why did you name only one human being? Who is this Harishchandra? And Narada goes on to then describe Harishchandra's story on how he attained greatness, which is obviously a story for another day. While he departs, Narada says, I want you to perform the Rajasuya Yajna because you are capable of performing it. You are a king of greatness who has achieved so much in so little time. But Narada also warns him, should you do it, there is a possibility a large-scale war may ensue, which might end up creating the destruction of this very earth. The idea being, a Rajasuya Yajna is when one king conquers all the other kingdoms and brings them under his suzerainty, and chances are some kings will not obviously like it and would want to attack him, and that leads to a chain reaction leading to a large war. Therefore, Yudhishthira is very concerned. While he wants to listen to what Narada has said, he also consults all his counselors and advisors, and they give him advice that he should stop deliberating on the consequences of the Rajasuya Yajna and perform it. Unsatisfied, Yudhishthira asks Dvaipayana, which is Vedavyasa, and Dhaumya, their family priest, about their opinion, and they too concur that he should indeed perform the yajna. He then goes on to ask his brothers, And Bhima says yes, and Arjuna says yes, but Yudhishthira is still unconvinced. He sends a swift messenger to Dwaraka to summon Krishna back to Khandavaprastha and says, I want your opinion, O Krishna. Finally, Krishna also agrees that a Rajasuya Yajna can be performed and should be by Yudhishthira. But he warns him that if you want to take up this, you need to do something else before that. And then he talks about Jarasandha. Jarasandha, the king who has to be killed before any of this can be undertaken. This Jarasandha's general is Shishupala, and he also gets support from Dantavakra, two major kings. Jarasandha has imprisoned many kings who need to be set free before a Rajasuya Yajna can be taken over. Finally convinced, when Yudhishthira says, I want to do it, he's still afraid of one thing. How will we get rid of Jarasandha? Direct frontal attack is impossible because Jarasandha has a large army. Then Bhima suggests that with Arjuna and Krishna, he would go challenge Jarasandha to a Malla Yuddha and defeat him. Yudhishthira is still unconvinced. He is afraid that he is pushing his brothers into mortal danger, but Krishna convinces that that is the right way to go. Bhima, Arjuna and Krishna will eventually travel to Magadha, the kingdom of Jarasandha, and then defeat him. Or will they? That's a story for another day. King Brihadratha had 2 wives, but he had no children. One day, he went and prayed to a saint who went into a yogic mudra, meditated under a mango tree, and eventually offered a boon to the king. This was a mango that fell into his lap, one that did not have a hole and was untouched by worms or birds. He said, give it to your wife and you will have a child. Now Brihadratha had 2 wives who cut the mango into 2 pieces and ate them. As the sage had promised, one child was born, except it was born half to one wife and half to the other. There was life in that body, but each half only had 1 eye, 1 ear, half a mouth, half a stomach and half a buttock, 1 leg and 1 hand also. Now, so scared were the wives of Brihadratha that they asked the midwives to wrap the 2 pieces of body in cloth and throw it away in garbage. As luck would have it, a Rakshasi named Jara walked by, smelled the 2 bodies and picked up the pieces. When she saw this was an infant, she decided it would be a good idea to join the 2 bodies together so that it was easier to carry home for her to eat. The moment she joined the 2 halves of the infant, the body became heavy as a mountain and hard as a vajra. She could no longer either carry it or have the courage to try and eat it. And when she realized that this was the baby that the king's wives had delivered, she took it and gave it to the king and said, I have lived in your kingdom happily and never starved or felt hungry for food ever. This is my way of returning something back to you. Take this child because this is your son that I have brought back to life. Because this child was united by Jara, which is Sandhi was done by Jara the Rakshasi. From that day onwards, this boy was to be known as Jarasandha, and when he grows up, he is going to terrify the kings and destroy the world until Bhima the warrior will come and challenge him to a single combat.